I think we're actually might already, and that's the interesting part. There's this like little delay from webinar of Zoom until Facebook, and we're live. Okay, everyone. Hi, welcome back. Happy New Year 2019. Let's get some big dreams going. And I am starting the year with a bang. This woman that I have, Stephanie Breedlove, I actually went and stalked her at an event and just stood there. Like just kind of circling her because I was like, I have to share this. She did such an amazing talk. I just knew that I had to share her on this platform so that we can really not continue to make things up and try to figure it out, but actually hear from the expert who was that woman who was at the breakfast table building a business and now sits in a boardroom. So Stephanie Breedlove, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I would love for you to share with people what makes you amazing. Again, this is that platform where we're getting to see how as women, as we grow our business, how we introduce ourselves well, how we become amazing. And I'd love for you to start off by sharing with us what makes you so amazing, because you are.
Well, thank you for the kind words. And hello, everyone. And it is a pleasure to kick off 2019 with you. I feel honored to be in such an important spot in the year. I'm going to give you a really brief bio so we can get down to business. As Michelle said, I'm Stephanie Breedlove. I'm an entrepreneur. I am co-founder of a bootstrapped business, was called Breedlove and Associates, now called Care.com HomePay. And the business actually is quite niche and boring. Payroll, taxes, benefits for families and their household employees, nannies, and elder care. And over a 20-year journey, we grew from the basement to industry leadership, to an exit to join forces with Care.com in late 2014, and then help the larger company go public. What a journey. And I've been on a mission the past couple of years to help women grow their careers, whether they are in finance, corporate America, sales, entrepreneurship. It is the age of the women, and women like me have a responsibility to step in and give back. So I'm here to try to do so today.
Absolutely, and thank you. And see, this is what happens when we get excited about our guests. I forgot to tell you who I am. I was just so wrapped up in Stephanie. Michelle Baker. And this is the platform, Women in Sales and Influence, and it's sponsored by the National Association of Sales Professionals. And again, welcome, glad you're here. So as we were chatting briefly before we came live, one of the things that a few of the things that Stephanie is going to share with us is some sales strategies that take you for a long-term relationships, because many of the women who are watching this and viewing this are in that space of opportunity, which feels like overwhelm, right? And that's what I say, when you intentionally set a vision, you're going to create that feeling that as you receive it, because it's causing you to grow in your abilities. So Stephanie's going to share with us some strategies of how to maintain that momentum and get clarity and focus on some steps that'll help you pace and create those profits. So take the floor. You said you had some things that you wanted to share, so I'll let you step right into that.
I will jump in, and Michelle, please feel free to interrupt me as I go and guide the conversation.
Absolutely.
Everyone, I'm a top-down thinker, so I'd like to start kind of high level about strategy. And I use the phrase, I have a book that came out about a year and a half ago called All In. And I'd like to talk about using that strategy of all in to then tactically go where you want to go. So I like to tell stories. So I want to tell a couple of stories of why I'm so profoundly a proponent of the idea of being all in to get you where you want to go. And I actually had a profound event in my life early on. I was 18 years old that exposed the power and the value of this notion of being all in, whether it's an outward all in or an inward all in or strategic. And I want to share that story. And it's a little sensational, but it's true. And I think it'll set the foundation. So here's the story. I was 18. It was my freshman year in college. I'd been in school about 8 weeks. And there was this frantic knock on the dorm room door about 5 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning after a Saturday night of fun on campus. And the RA was pounding on doors up and down the hallway, and it brought about 25 of us tumbling into the hallway, rubbing our eyes in the bright light, trying to figure out what the panic was about and why we were up at 5 a.m. when we learned that one of the girls who lived in the dorm room next to me had been found unconscious and not breathing. And the RA was in a panic looking for help. So somebody frantically placed the 911 call, and I'm going to date myself. There were no cell phones back then, so it was a landline phone call. And about 20 of us gathered around our new friend's lifeless body. And the RA said to us in the silence of the dawn of the morning, "Can anybody do anything to help before the paramedics get here?" And we stood there paralyzed, looking at each other, unsure, unconfident. You could just feel it. But there was a life hanging in the balance. Well, I'd been a high school lifeguard at the neighborhood pool, which means I was trained in CPR, and it also means I'd never used it. And I found myself stepping forward into the middle of the circle, mumbling something about CPR and never used it. And I straddled my new friend with the RA at my side, and I went to work, and I methodically thought through each of those steps of CPR, and I administered CPR to the best of my ability. And actually the air moved in and out. And I thought, and I hoped she had a pulse. And about 10 minutes later, which seemed like 10 years, the paramedics arrived, and they ushered us out into the hallway. They closed the door. We all stood there just waiting in the balance. And it wasn't long that the door opened and a stretcher came out with a zipped body bag on the top. And I watched my new friend and the paramedics roll down the hallway and around the corner, never to be seen again. And one of the paramedics did a wonderful thing. He came back 3 or 4 minutes later, and I could hear him in my ear saying what a hero I was and what a great effort, and that she was an epileptic and had had a grand mal seizure and had passed away at least 2 hours before being found. And there was nothing that any of us could have done. And I didn't feel like a hero, and I didn't feel that I made a difference, but I knew, regardless of the outcome, I would go all in and I would do something like that over and over again. So I knew that was an all-in moment, and it did not have a positive outcome. And in the years that followed, did I really understand what I may have experienced? I don't think so. I think it took years for me to embrace that. But what I learned years later that is applicable every day in my life, and hopefully in yours too, is that you're either in or you're out. There are no varying levels of in. There's no straddling the fence. And you know what I'm talking about. When you give the B effort and you hope you get A results, when you sit back and you sort of wait for someone else to make the decision, or you just go where the wind blows you, or you make the decision that's the path of least resistance because you know it's easier, even though the right and more successful path is right in front of you, but it's harder. And quick story to wrap up this strategic focus on all in is, as Michelle said, I'm an entrepreneur. And of course, making the decision to jump in and be the first co-founder of a business is an all-in moment. But the real all-in moment, I think, started about 2 years in. It maybe where some of you are right now. We were 2 years in. My children were 4 and 5 years old. We were living on my husband's salary. We weren't making it yet. We had about 6 or 9 months left of savings to make it. And I sat there in front of the computer each day and thought, who am I kidding? I can't do this. I don't have the new skills. I was a financial person to be a sales and a marketing person at the right level. And then on the other side, I would say, okay, this is an all-in moment. I can do this. I can learn. I can leverage. I can make it work. And that's when I knew that my efforts to convert the client into a sale, to establish a new business development relationship that hopefully would last decades, that those had to happen. and they had to happen efficiently, they had to happen smartly, and they had to happen now. And I think that was one of the biggest all-in moments of my career. And you all may be in some of those moments. So there are my high-level stories of why I'm so committed to this notion of all in. You're either in or you're out. You're not straddling. And Michelle mentioned to me before we came on that a lot of people in the group are struggling with having good problems, having more opportunities in front of them than they can seize. And I think Michelle wanted me to kind of speak to some of that. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Like right now, if anybody's watching, now you see why I had to have her on. I was just riveted at the edge of my seat. But yes, I mean, what I heard you say was about the leverage, and the making the good decisions, how to become more efficient in not just your actions, but your thoughts, because that's what that's what leads us to take action, what we're thinking about ourselves. And I love how you utilize that story to show that there was no hesitation that if I'm going to do this, I'm going to give it everything I have and not taking that B action, looking for A result. So please share with us anything that you can empower so people will walk away and even start getting results today.
So let's go a little tactical. I told some high-level strategic stories about, why I really, really believe in this notion of all in. But how do we put it to work in practice? Two thoughts came to mind when Michelle and I were talking before we got live. And I have two P's that I live by. I call them pace and priority. And in our world of really feeling like you're being touched at every moment, whether it be in person or on the phone or via email or via text or via podcast. And also this notion of FOMO, of I have to be at the event, I have to be online, I have to be everywhere. It eliminates the idea of pace and priority to get to where you want to go, because you feel like you need to be everywhere, you need to be going everywhere. And I found that the greatest level of success is to sit down, particularly in a January, and say, okay, what are my top 5, my top 10 priorities of the year, of the quarter, of the month, and why? And then stick to those, and then decide, what's my pace for achieving those? Can I achieve them? And I can tell you right now, whatever you think your pace is, double that to actually, or slow that down, I should say, by 50% to actually do it right. If you think you can do something in a day, give it 2. If you think you can do something in a month, give it 2, and so on. And when those constant opportunities come up that don't move the needle at the greatest level for where you are right now in your career, stop and say, do they fit into my current priorities? And if they do, make room for them. If they don't, say no and feel confident in saying no, that they are not going to move the needle at the greatest level. And Michelle gave me the best example. She had an opportunity to go to an event yesterday, but she was still catching up from a previous event and trying to make valuable, long-term, meaningful contacts. So do you go to the new event and spread yourself thin? Or do you establish what could be 3 new relationships that are going to turn into an extra $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 in revenue down the road that otherwise might have been lost? So I really do believe that we need to fight the societal norm of be everything to everyone, and speed is everything, and set your pace and set your priority, and try to stick to it, and why you do that. Lower level than that, let's go tactical. Let's talk about being in the sales process. And you could probably tell from listening to me talk that I don't come from a sales background. I come from an operational background, a financial background, and I had to learn to be good at sales and marketing. Otherwise, your business isn't going to make it. Or if you are in a sales role for a company, you're not going to make it. Sales is what makes the world go round. And I thought of 2 things that I think people spin their wheels in the sales process that I want to give you some tips on. And there's only 2 tips. I don't like to give more than 2 or 3. So first of all, in the sales process, If the company that you're working for has not given you good structure, or even if they've given you good structure and you can improve upon it, sales is not something that just happens. I think we read and we see on TV, the best salespeople are just so good at it, it just happens. It's not true. It's a process. It's methodical. It can be evaluated. It has failures and successes. Build a step-by-step process, whether it's in the communication in a phone call, communication in the email, the number of steps, and it should build upon itself. It should tell a story. Each step should have a purpose, and it should be delivering value, education, meaning, while moving towards close. And I think that that's often really hard for salespeople to commit to the structure. There is structure, and structure creates success, and it can be evaluated. Now let's talk about within that structure, the actual process of trying to close successfully. I feel like the two biggest mistakes that happen in sales are the person who goes the extra mile all the time and assumes that the extra mile is going to get the client to convert. The extra mile will get the client to say, gosh, I want to be your client. If you go the extra mile without focusing on closing, you won't close, or you won't close at the rate you want to. Or the absolute reverse. And if you're one of these folks, know who you are. It's all about the close. Do I really have to do the work to go the extra mile? Do I have to really know the product in depth? Do I really have to educate the client? Do I really have to answer those 15 extra ridiculous questions? I just want to close. You're not going to close at the right level either. It's the person who goes the extra mile, knows the extra, delivers the extra, creates the value, focuses on relationship, while at the same time moving the client towards closure. The client doesn't want to make the decision on their own. They want to be guided. They want to be stepped right into it. So go the extra mile while focusing on closing at the same time. So those are my series of tips.
Oh, I mean, those are absolute amazing tips, which are right in line at what we do at National Association of Sales Professionals, is to help people to create that habit and that mindset of what it takes to perform, right? To understand where you currently are, where you want to be, and close the gap, so that you're creating the traction in sales and income and influence that you want for your profession and your business. So thank you so much for that, because that was just summed up and said so amazingly well. What I'd love to do is, as you've talked about the tacticals, if you have any, I want to share anything that you've seen for those women who are currently need to optimize their opportunity. Because I say opportunity always shows up like an obstacle, possibility shows up like a problem. So if you have a lot of obstacles in your way, you actually have a lot of opportunities. So if there's anything you want to share in your experience that you've seen that people can start to do today to implement and create some change and some momentum, so they can.
Yes, I've got one for you for today. It's for today, it's for every day, and it's really easy. I know we listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of broadcasts in which you go, I'm going to have to step back and strategize for 6 months to make that happen. So I'm going to try to give you something that is for today and for every day. And Michelle and I actually talked about it before we came on today. One of the easiest keys to turning that obstacle into an opportunity, which, as you said, is, or that possibility, or from a problem to a possibility, is always be growing your knowledge and your skills. Do not reinvent the wheel by yourself. Leverage the knowledge, the information, the wisdom, the skills of people out there who are willing to share. And the easiest way to do that, I got a simple tip for you today, right now. And you have to admit, before we jump into this, that you're not doing this as well as you want to, and that you don't read as much as you should, because that's the tip. Read. The simplest way to start growing your skills and your knowledge and leveraging others every day and not reinvent the wheel is read. And when I say read, spend 10 or 15 minutes a day. Find your favorite set of articles from mainstream media or from a podcast. It could be listen. It doesn't have to be read. And spend, I'm not kidding, 15 minutes. Listen to a part of a podcast. Read one article each day that is focused in an area you want to improve or a skill you want to add. And just simply read. And over the course of the week, won't make much of a difference. Over the course of a month, a little difference. Over the course of 3 months, you will find that you are moving ahead of the pack simply because you are gaining knowledge by reading or listening a few minutes a day. And I say that because when I was growing my business in the mid 1990s, the internet didn't exist. And we have so much access to easy information. Find your favorites. And I say every day, but if you can do it 4 times a week, you are going to open up opportunity and possibility by growing knowledge and growing skill simply by reading.
Oh, I mean, that was absolutely amazing because you talked about them getting clear on what they wanted to create an impact, go from year to quarter to month, right? And then the strategy, now add to it, now you know what it is your impact is, read to support that. So it's just like tying the bow on what you just said so beautifully. And I'm a proponent of reading. I tell people, when people complain about traffic, I'm like, traffic is the gift of time. You've got like uninterrupted time, right? Listen to a book, listen to a podcast. Kidding. I call my car or my vehicles have always been the University of Michelle, because that's the place where I get to learn, where I should say I choose to learn. And it's been that way for years. And that, again, the story for me, it happened when job roles changed. My territory went from a 20-minute drive to a 2.5 hour to the longest point. And instead of begrudging it, because I remember I was just starting to embrace and learn the principles of gratitude. And this is back in the early 2000s. And so I said, how can I use this? And I remember I was part of a group and all of a sudden they had all these these tapes and CDs. So I started grabbing them because they had a learning library and I started listening to anything I wanted to listen, anything that piqued my interest. And before I knew it, like you said, I looked up and within 6 months, people were like, oh my God, you know so much. You're so wise. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. I like being wise.
And are you still doing it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And that's the Zig Ziglar rule. Never, always have something to read or write or do so that when you're interrupted or when things don't go your way or when you need to sit, you don't get frustrated and angry. You stay in a state of gratitude because now you have the gift of time.
Yes, that's right. And I will add on top of that, and this is really, getting a little more personal about particularly women. And particularly if you're working in an alone job in sales, for example, or if you're an entrepreneur and you're doing your own thing, we tend to reinvent the wheel. We tend to stand almost paralyzed, as Michelle eloquently said it previously, inside the circle, waiting to try to figure it out on our own, or waiting for somebody else, to solve the problem for us. And we simply need to have the confidence to say, number one, everybody else is in the same boat I'm in. We're all trying to figure it out, whatever it is, and that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And it is okay to say, I don't know, to ask questions, and to say somebody else probably does know, and go find out from them, use their knowledge, use their experience, leverage them, and check that obstacle off the list on the way to the next opportunity or an enhancement in a skill that you're building.
Absolutely. And again, tying to what you said about being all in, it's that willingness to, we call it the vulnerability. Brene Brown has coined that phrase so well, but that vulnerability is your superpower. You cannot learn unless you're willing to admit that you don't know, that you're willing to admit that I need to learn something that will help move me forward. And it's that willingness to, and I always say, go out and start testing networking groups and places where other people that are similar mindset. Meetup.com is a beautiful resource to go and test. And remember, that expectation that you're going to find that perfect place real quick is what kills you. The willingness to be all in, relentless, and no matter what it takes, and kiss a couple of frogs before you hit your prince. Right?
Yes, a lot of frogs. And,
a lot of frogs.
And the frogs become valuable because you got to kiss the frogs before you get to the prince.
Exactly. You're learning, right? So you're learning more. And what I find is those frogs for me have become wisdom, because then there's another woman that comes along and asks a question, and I can say, oh, hey, I attended that group. What exactly are you looking for? Because maybe